Hey, everybody. Before we get into the podcast, I want to talk about a really exciting, awesome new sponsor of the show, my good friends Joe and Kyle over at Psychedelics Today, which is an amazing podcast providing excellent information and education and on harm reduction and psychedelic medicines. They have great guests on every week talking about these very, very important topics. So I highly recommend going to check that out. And today we're going to talk with Kyle. He's joining me right now from Psychedelics Today about their new course, Navigating Psychedelics. And in my opinion, from what I've seen, it's really just a comprehensive overview of getting started in psychedelics, what, the kinds of questions that one might have, the kind of information. So it's a great resource, and I'm really, really super happy and excited to be promoting this. I think it's going to be really beneficial to a lot of people. So Kyle, thanks for joining me today to talk about this amazing work that you and Joe have put together, Psychedelics Today and Navigating Psychedelics.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Yeah, so Navigating Psychedelics, Lessons on Self-Care and Integration. It's pretty much a 101, 102 psychedelic course. Joe and I put it together from years of experience of working with these states, and also really integrate a lot of our training in holotropic breathwork and our time studying that. So the course really just is a nice arc. Starts off with preparation, what are psychedelics, go over harm reduction techniques, testing, safety, and then we get into what is the psychedelic experience. We kind of have this nice metaphor of a space expedition, right? So what's the preparation like? What is that experience when you kind of get out there in the psychedelic realm? So we go over a framework that we like to use for understanding these experiences. Comes from Stan Groff, who is a pioneer in LSD research and transpersonal psychology. He's been studying this stuff for a long time. And then on the descent back down, we talk about self-care. How do we take care of ourselves after an experience? And then the integration process. How are we moving these experiences or these insights forward into our daily lives so we can make some change? And so the course is jam-packed with material. We have 13 or 14 master classes that include interviews with experts that have been providing integration in the field of psychedelics. And it comes with a bunch of great resources. We have a trip journal, an integration workbook, which actually you can get a physical copy on Amazon, but we have PDF downloads in the course. We have some music playlists, a brief little breathwork introduction, and tons of tools and techniques and interviews. It's really a jam-packed course.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's just so great to see you guys putting this together. I know that it can benefit so many people, and through your experience, you're a student of these transpersonal psychology and the holotropic breathwork practices, and learning from Stan Groff. Taking yours and Joe's experience, as well as the information and education that you've learned and are now sharing from others, it's really awesome. And it's so beneficial because there's so many questions out there, and everybody's experiences are different, and there's a lot of harms, and there's a lot of dangers, and there's a lot of what should we look for and what should we avoid. And in my opinion, it seems like you and Joe are right on the leading edge of providing the best, updated, most well-vetted, and educational resources out there. So yeah, I highly recommend people going to check this out. I'm going to have a link in the show notes that you can click on, and it will take you directly there. If you want to go check out their website, it's Psychedelics Today. And like Kyle was just saying, great introduction to what psychedelics are, to their background, to the preparation and safety, and reducing harm, and having a nice, respectful journey in this process. So thank you, for Kyle, for coming on and explaining that. Anything else that people should know about the course, or where to go, or anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, Joe and I like to say it's the course that we wish we had when we were younger, exploring non-ordinary states of consciousness. And so, it's just everything we've put together from our own personal experiences and also academic career. I did an undergrad in transpersonal psychology and really took a lot of time analyzing and studying these states of consciousness. And also, yeah, I think, one of the main goals that we like to emphasize about this course is to maximize the benefit and reduce the harm. So keeping people out of jail, out of hospitals, and hopefully really maximizing your potential if you are going to engage in this. So really taking a harm reduction approach here, and we really just want people to stay safe.
Excellent. Yeah, this is an invaluable resource, guys. And, when working with these medicines, or, when just enjoying them recreationally, there's a lot of things that can come up, and these guys, in my opinion, have put together something truly amazing here, and I'm happy to share that with the Mycadelic crowd. So please go check that out, Psychedelics Today. I'll put the link in the show notes, and and check out their podcast, and also if there's extra support that's needed, I know that you guys offer that as well. So thanks again, Kyle, for sharing that, and look forward to continuing on this journey, and hopefully giving people the best advantage that they can have when navigating this realm. So perfectly titled course, Navigating Psychedelics, Lessons in Self-Care. Go check that out, guys. Thank you so much again, Kyle and Joe, for putting this together, and thanks for coming on, Kyle, to talk about it.
Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the 100th episode series spectacular event. This part of the podcast, we have another kind of panel discussion, sort of. It's more of a roundtable discussion in front of a live audience, filmed at, or recorded rather, at Barfly at the Alamo Draft House here in Denver. And I wanted to kind of continue the conversation that we had with the panel. After the Neurons to Nirvana event, I wanted people to get engaged and to hang out and be a part of continuing to share and bring awareness and education to the topics that we're talking about. So we have on this panel, we have Bethany, who's the president of the National Psychedelic Club, setting up psychedelic clubs all over. And shout out to Psychedelic Club of Maine, Psychedelic Club of Pittsburgh. I recently became aware of you on Instagram, so awesome. I hope those clubs are doing well, and congratulations to you guys for putting those together, and thanks to Bethany for heading up this project of creating all kinds of psychedelic clubs all over the place. And Joey from the Psychedelic Club of Denver is on this panel as well. Joey puts on events every week for the Psychedelic Club, and they always have amazing guests and people there, and movie nights and things like this. So it's really, really cool to get out and meet other people in the psychedelic community. So if you don't have a psychedelic club, if you don't have an area where you can meet like-minded people, if you just listen to this show and you don't really have a space to talk about it with anybody else, contact Bethany and figure out a way that maybe you can form a psychedelic club in your town. Because it's really cool. These events are really nice. So we have them. We have Travis from Decriminalize Denver, who is just an amazing person. I've had some great conversations with, and would love to talk to him further on the show, because every time I talk, he's one of these people where every time I talk to him, I learn something new, or I think about something in a different way. So Travis is a really interesting person, and he joined us for a part of the show. My beautiful girlfriend, my partner in crime, Jenna, she joins us at the end of the show as well. She's doing some amazing things. I'm so proud of her. You're going to hear from her very shortly too in a podcast with her and I. She recently just started her life coaching business. She's been a yoga teacher. As I've talked about on the show, I think I've mentioned before, we met at the ayahuasca center in Peru. I was working there at the time, and she was visiting as a guest. And afterwards, we wound up getting together. We wound up both going back there, where she then taught yoga. She's since started a life coaching business and is taking on clients that are working in transitioning. So transitions, in relationships, in careers, in just points in life where you feel like you need a change. Jenna is the full embodiment of that, as she did it herself, quitting her corporate job of 7 years, making good money, to travel around the world, to go to all kinds of places like India and Nepal and Peru. And she's really walking her path, and it's an amazing thing to see. And now she's offering help to other people who feel maybe like they're stuck, they need a change, and they want to take their life in a different direction. So she's amazing. She's, I always say that, like, I'm her first client, really. She's improved my life dramatically. So, and if she can help me, then there's no one out there that she can't help. So she's amazing, and she's a part of this podcast. You'll hear more from her. We also have Matt Kahl. He joins us. You heard him on the panel, and Matt hangs out and a part of the conversation too. Matt from Veterans for Natural Rights. And then Bill. Bill sits down, and Bill gets involved in the conversation as well. And so it's just a really, really great podcast. I really liked it a lot. First ever live podcast. And once again, the audio recording is not what you're used to on this show. It's a little muffled. It's a little hot. I tried to fix it up in post a little bit, but failed to really get it perfect. It's one of those things where, we were using the venue's mics and right after the event, and we had to set up in the other room. So lesson learned for the next live podcast that I'll do. They will sound way better, I promise you. But for this one, the audio's a little poor, not the quality that you're used to on this show. And so I apologize in advance for that. But the content is rich and deep and amazing. We have some serious knowledge drops and wisdom shares and just emotional stories, and people really exposing their soul and laying it all out there. So really happy about this. So this is part 2. Part 3 will be the solo cast. You're going to want to hear that. It's going to be where I'm talking about my experience of being the host of Mycadelic for 100 episodes. What has my journey been? What have I learned? What are the things that I'm willing to share about, my life and my experience? So I'm really looking forward to that as well. That'll be part 3. All right. Well, I don't have much else to say other than I really enjoyed this conversation with this group of people. Once again, Bethany, Rafael, Bethany from Psychedelic Club, Rafael from Innate Path, Joey from Denver Psychedelic Club, Matt Kahl from Veterans for Natural Rights, Bill Byrnes from Good Cinema, and Travis from Decriminalize Denver, and then Jenna, of course, and me. And so, yeah, here we go. First ever Mycadelic live podcast recorded at the GoodCinema Neurons to Nirvana, the GoodCinema Neurons to Nirvana event. After the event in the bar next door, and it was a really great time. It was so good to meet all of the people that came out for that, and to the audience who sat and listened and participated. So thank you to everybody, and I hope you guys enjoy this one.
Psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally laid down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything we know is wrong.
We don't need new laws that control our consciousness and rigidly place it in a prison.
Cognitive liberty. The fact that as adults, if we're not hurting anybody else, we should have the right to explore the contours of our own consciousness without any mediation or legislation on the part of somebody else.
Reject authority. Authority is a lie.
Or is it perception?
Information is power, but we have to seize the opportunity. The opportunity.
Thanks for being here, guys. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out and joining the podcast. So this is the first live podcast that I've ever done, and I'm coming up on my 100th episode, so I'm psyched.
Congratulations.
I wouldn't want to spend it any other way with you beautiful human beings here doing the amazing things that you're doing. So Let's go around and introduce ourselves. Matt, you were just on the panel. You said some awesome things tonight, and I was at that Veterans for Natural Rights meeting about a month ago, I think. Just blown away. I'm just continually blown away by all the meetings that I attend and the people that I see and the stories that I hear. So share yours a little bit.
Thanks. My name is Matt Kahl. I am Executive Director of Veterans for Natural Rights and also the founder. I started the organization in order to teach veterans how to reintegrate into society again. My own personal way was through natural medicine and community and purpose. Finding a purpose was huge, and I think that it's one of those things that we all search for, especially after leaving military service. Our mission has been given to us for so long that we don't really know how to find one on our own, and for that reason, many people struggle. So I try to create a space where veterans can heal, find their voice, and then change the world.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so important. So thanks for doing all that work that you're doing. And we have Joey from Denver Psychedelic Club. Thank you for being here, Joey.
Yeah, hey, my name's Joey. I'm with I've been the leader of the Psychedelic Club of Denver for almost the past 2 years now. I've recently stepped up on the national board. So, yeah, anyone listening to this, if you want to start a chapter, get at us on Joey at Psychedelic Club or Bethany at Psychedelic Club. Look us up on social media. We're very active. What we're really trying to do is, foster the grassroots community. We try to make most of our events free, a very casual membership. What we're just trying to do really is just create the community that the drug war has destroyed, and just provide a lot of anecdotal, as well as professional speakers, speaking on science and stuff, but really bring it back to the community, as we believe, the psychedelic the healing is for the masses, not just for the ivory tower. So we're here to foster the community and help it thrive.
All right, nice. Yeah, that deserves an applause. Bill?
Hi. I've been on the podcast before, but never in this type of setting. This is really cool, being in front of people recording with this amazing podcast. And I think Joey said it best. It's all about community. And as someone that has been to Psychedelic Club of Denver events, they're amazing because it's a community that fosters inclusivity and connection around things that people have been, I think, afraid to talk about because of these societal boundaries that have been put in place without our consent. So, yeah, let's take the power back.
Hell yeah.
Hi. My name is Travis. My official title is Field Organizer for Decriminalize Denver, but I wear a million hats, as anybody around me can tell you. But I'm 39 now. When I was 21, I was convicted for attempting to grow mushrooms, which officially looks like manufacture of a controlled substance. So I am hitting the streets every day and changing the paradigm. I'm trying to create an environment where people can freely talk about this stuff, can heal themselves, figure out how they can be catalysts for more action, and just spreading compassion in general.
Can I ask real quick how you were attempting to grow mushrooms but not growing them?
Okay, so the spores had already started, right? There was already something going, and the police served a warrant on my house while it was in process. They took it to a forensic chemist, and 3 weeks later, when they produced the mushrooms that I was trying to grow, they formally charged me.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah.
Fuck the police.
So wait, the police were actually growing the mushrooms themselves?
Yes.
It was a hit
Forensic
song,
chemist.
so
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, police, they do that, right? Because they got to meet their quotas, They got to get people in cells and make that money.
Is that like taking a gun from you, then shooting someone and charging you with murder?
Well, the district attorney was
crack on them.
directly quoted as saying that I was growing poison that could kill. So in the eyes of public perception, that's pretty much what I was doing, and to have to continue to live in that environment and deal with that stigma is pretty intense. As a 21-year-old kid, I had a few positive experiences with mushrooms, and I just wanted to take it into my own hands for access reasons. And yeah, really it exposed me to, being part of the system and being caught up in it. And now at least I'm able to advocate for change and be a voice for change and, start real conversations.
But to the cold, hard machine of the system, you're a criminal.
Yeah, but fortunately, I don't need them.
Right.
They need me.
I think we all realized that in there when we were watching the film Neurons to Nirvana with like the drug propaganda from the 50s and stuff, and just that kind of like, they were smoking a marijuana cigarette. Can you believe it? And just the view of us kind of people up here. Like, does this look like a dangerous crowd? Like, do we look like dangerous people? I think not. Right?
I'm scared.
All the pins on everyone's shirts could probably poke a lot of people.
That's right. We're going to poke you. Yeah. Old school Facebook style. Rafael, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Rafael. I'm involved in a few different organizations. First and foremost, I'm a therapist at Innate Path, cannabis and ketamine-assisted therapy clinic. I'm also a founding board member of Source Research Foundation, which is a grant foundation that's formed to give grant awards to graduate students who want to do psychedelic-related research. And I'm also the founder of the 5 Hive, which is a 5-MeO-DMT forum. And it's mainly geared towards harm reduction and information on, just safety and ways that people can be safe in their exploration of that molecule. And yeah, just continuing to create community and support for people that are doing that.
And teaching college kids sorcery, right? That's
yes, sorcery.
Harry Potter isms. Bethany.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It has been a beautiful night, to say the least. I'm very happy to see all of us together. My name is Bethany, and I'm the president of the Psychedelic Club, the national board. What we really aim to do is normalize the usage of substances, especially psychedelics, but we do not stigmatize against any. I really want the Psychedelic Club to be a place where people can feel safe to talk about their experiences. I know whenever I first got involved in psychedelics and I didn't really know what they were, I didn't really have anybody to turn to. The people that introduced me to it really couldn't relate to the experiences that I had. So I want to create that space for people. I also want to empower our community again and empower individuals. I want people to know that just because they don't have a higher level of education that they can't be a part of this movement. So I want to really encourage to see people shine and to see their creativity around what we're trying to do and to make sure that everybody feels heard, because we can't do this without one another.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we heard from Sarah Gale inside about her experience when she was talking about like first getting introduced to psychedelics and how it was kind of like just taking psychedelics, doing coke, drinking beer. It was just like a part of the thing that was in the mix. And I went through that experience too, like at a young age, just like whatever I get my hands on, I'm just gonna snort it, sniff it, whatever. I mean, those are both two nasal ways. Yeah, boof it. I'll bufo Alvarius it up my bufo. I wonder if anyone's attempted that. Please don't stick toads up your ass. That's a message for the night.
Squeeze the venom first.
Yeah, squeeze the venom into your rectum. Mitchell said that about the broom thing. Is that true? That was quite the yarn.
You can't prove it wrong.
That was fascinating.
There is enough evidence to show that it's highly likely that the ointment, the flying ointment, contained the tropane alkaloids from Datura, yeah. So and those compounds are pretty powerful in terms of creating an altered reality.
Right. Yeah. So they were putting them on brooms and then they were placing them in there.
Yeah, they traverse the mucal membranes quite well.
Membranes, yeah.
So
that's a scientific way of putting it.
Is that like Jimson weed?
Yeah.
Like in that
Yeah.
Same alkaloid.
So have you read the Don Juan series?
Yeah.
He talks about it, but that's one of the side effects. It's like flight.
Yep. Exactly.
One of the side effects is flight.
doTERRA, is perceptual flight.
Really?
Yeah. If you go on Arrowwood, this is one of my kind of secret pastimes. Go on Arrowwood and just read Datura reports. It's the worst stories. I mean, if you want to read horror stories, I mean, there's people that literally jumping off the second floor of their house because they really thought they could fly, and I mean, that stuff, probably the most dangerous kind of mind-altering experience you can.
You think that's where the stories of people early on in the psychedelic movement come from, like people jumping off of buildings and stuff?
I think that's probably more likely that people were experimenting with that kind of stuff. I think it's possible people on maybe at really high doses of LSD and unsafe environments or whatever. There was that one person in the CIA that was dosed unknowingly,
So that documentary Wormwood on Netflix is great.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I think that there may have been some cases, but I think that's probably way more exaggerated than was actually happened.
I went to the University of Iowa. I saw a bunch of people jump off shit, but they were just drunk. So
yeah, alcohol.
Yeah. What about how many people have jumped off of stuff when they're drunk? Can we start with that statistic?
Can we need to collect that data? It's really important, actually.
Warning, one may think you can fly.
Well, does anyone have any experience with Datura here?
No, it scares the shit out of me.
What scares? What's the one thing that you've done that still scares the shit out of you the most?
The one thing that I've actually done?
Yeah.
Oh shit. I don't know.
Jumping out of an airplane.
There's a lot.
no shoe.
I would probably say MDPV.
What was that like?
It's a strong stimulant. It's a research chemical, and it can create some pretty bizarre delusions pretty quickly.
Very
fun
Very
ones.
powerful cathinone stimulant.
Yeah.
What about you, Rafael? Anything?
Like the scariest experience that I've ever had?
Like Iboga for me scares the shit out of me.
Yeah,
So
Iboga was pretty scary. But I think probably the scariest experience out of all was when I was pretty young. I was a teenager, and I overdosed on a research chemical that was a benzodiazepine. And I was blacking in and out for about 5 days. So it was very scary because, there'd be times where I'd say stuff that I would not have any memory, and then I would kind of wake up and people were reacting to the thing that I had said before. And so, I would say in terms of like the scariest kind of loss of control and that kind of thing was probably would have been the scariest. Wouldn't want to repeat that. Wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, it seems to be, and maybe Travis, you want to say something, but it seems like it's these analogs or the research chemicals like that people are putting together. I remember the days when you could go on, the dark web and get some stuff on there, and like that was pretty cool because you could know where it's coming from, and hey, it's like Yelp for drugs. They have good ratings, good reviews. This is great, but there's a lot of different kinds of things on there also being sold, and you got to be careful what you experiment with, right?
Well, heck, prior to 2010, it wasn't even the dark web. I memean, you could just go on the internet and find a manufacturer and just get a couple kilos of whatever the hell you wanted to. And in fact, even 5-MeO was legal. You could get that just by the package.
I wasn't turned on yet by 2010. So
okay.
The wise elder speaks, ladies and gentlemen. Back in the days when
good old
psychedelics
days.
were everywhere, as far as America, land paved with mushrooms. We wish. That would be great. I mean, it kind of technically is. You can go and find these mushrooms, folks.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure you're picking the right one.
Ones out
Because the poisonous ones, that's like what on the DEA site, that's one of the dangers of doing psychedelic mushrooms is picking the wrong ones.
Yeah. Do you forage?
I don't.
Yeah.
But not because I don't know how to, I just never have.
Yeah. But you can forage.
Oh, definitely. And they actually grow here in Colorado.
Yeah.
And if you're really savvy, you can spread spores on grass, the cows will eat the spores, and eventually you will get psilocybin mushrooms.
You got to be following around that cow for a while, though.
True.
We just become friends with a cow. I mean, that's
Terrence McKenna style.
Yeah.
The fungus itself has a relationship inside the stomach of the cow that it breaks down the cellulose that the cow cannot.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's like a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, wow. So maybe that's why the cow is so sacred in India.
It could be.
Is that, hey?
I mean,
did I just stumble across something here?
We can't disprove that.
Terrence McKenna has talked about this theory, the sacred cow and the, why it's sacred. People following these cows around and pick up these mushrooms, and out of the cow shit you find enlightenment.
Okay, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like also symbolic of what the experience could be like, having to go into shit to get something great out of it. It's like I'm sure a lot of us have experienced things like that before, right?
Extreme levels of shit, yes.
Yeah. Extreme levels of shit.
Even the shittiest situations can produce something pretty awesome.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of metaphors in there.
Yeah, and spread too.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of like the shit is kind of a metaphor anyway. Like we're working through the shit to get to a better place with psychedelics, and psychedelics themselves work from shit to become a better thing.
What's the Christian thing, from ashes to ashes, where it's from shit to shit, maybe,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to diverge on a tangent of shit right now, but it's when we consume things, they don't just disappear, go somewhere. So it's all going back to the one. We're all the cow. We're all the shit. We're everything. But it's pretty awesome. I mean, why not? I just think that a lot of people just think, okay, yeah, psychedelics, just another drug. Like, just take it at a party, whatever. I mean, I think if you're doing it responsibly and you know what you're getting into. But I have so many people ask me, oh yeah, I took 7 grams like at this party the other night, and I didn't have a good time. Well, yeah. I mean, you're.
That's a dumb idea.
Yeah. What are you thinking? So
They probably weren't going to have a good time anyways.
So they were like, I got to make sure I have a good time. I got to eat 7 grams. Yeah.
Have some time.
So, I mean, like in terms of that kind of stuff, like, do you get people asking you like questions about that?
Yeah, I think there's this notion in the psychedelic world in general that you need to have like a heroic dose, and you really need to go through the trip the first time to really feel it. And I think that's totally not necessary. You can start off with a very mild dose. There's nothing wrong with taking a quarter hit of acid your first time. Don't listen to your friend that's trying to get you to take 2 hits. Start low, go slow. There's nothing wrong. If you don't have the totally religious experience, it's okay. I think it's much better to just get a taste, get a feel, just so you know the next time you're probably going to need some awesome setting. So, don't be afraid to take a low dose your first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I encourage the concept of sea legs, so that people can kind of get a rough idea what they're in for before they really go deep, so that they're not too surprised by too many things that may take their experience in a very dark and negative direction just because of fear and anxiety.
Yeah, and it's totally possible too, because I mean, if you're taking 7 grams of mushrooms in Times Square, like you're pretty much like asking for it,
I
think that sounds overwhelming.
Yeah. Not like I've ever done that before, but I'm just saying that could happen.
That's how a lot of people end up becoming prejudiced against psychedelics. Is they take way too much the first time, they have a really bad experience, and then they're just like, this is a complete no. I will never try this again. It has no use. So I think it's, in general, the approaches of taking a lot, a heroic dose at first is really bad.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can learn a lot from cannabis. When cannabis was first legalized both medicinally and recreationally, we saw tons of stupid shit happening because people are eating edibles and not knowing how much they should have. And, even then when there was education starting to come out, we realized there needs to be a heck of a lot more. And it's so deep because one person can, eat 20 milligrams of cannabis and someone else eats 5, and the person that ate 5 is way more off their gourd than someone that ate 20. And and it's the same with psychedelics. We really need to just have a deeper understanding. And so I think the adage of you can always take more, but you can't take less is something we should always stick to.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I feel like we're in a very special time right now where there's like there's a research, like all this research is happening, and it's wonderful and it's terrific. And then there's also just a lot more exploring psychedelics at music festivals, at parties. Like this is, I'm hearing, witnessing, being a part of this, and so it's really special to see that happening. But also, like what you said, you made a good point, Matt, about like how someone could take psychedelics and then they have a bad experience and then they become prejudiced and they write it off. So it's like, what kind of ways, and I think we talked a little bit about it in the room during Neurons to Nirvana, is like, what's a good way to kind of approach someone who's just like gung-ho about taking psychedelics in an epic amount, somewhere where you're like, maybe that's not such a good idea, maybe you want to tone it down, but also be respectful to like, let's also have fun. Like, let's enjoy this too.
Baby steps.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can always recommend a booster. Usually when taking a psychedelic, especially if it's the first time, I usually recommend someone take, say, if you want to take they really want to take 2 hits of acid. Okay, take the first hit of acid. Let's wait 2 hours and let's talk to you in 2 hours. And be like, you want to take that second hit? So
yeah,
it's, you can always take more drugs. You can't take less drugs. So I would recommend maybe if you split your dose, if you really want that heroic dose, split it in half. Take it, wait 2 hours, then talk to yourself.
Yeah.
I just say simmer your fucking roll, hero.
Hero. Slow down there, cowboy.
Intention is really important. Teaching somebody that they can program their experience. That's something as a teenager I didn't have. So I was at the mercy of wherever the wind was taking me. But then when I figured out that I could actually have a thought before I go into the experience and come out of the experience with a lot of knowledge, that just changed it. So the people that want to go deep, I would like to talk to them for a while, just to see where their head's at, because once you get psychedelic, then it's just like all bets are off. If you know that what you're taking has no overdose level, like that's pretty encouraging. You might think you're dying, but as long as you know that you cannot die, I think that's like good footing to have. So if someone came to me, I would offer to dialogue with them and then maybe even sit with them.
Yeah. Wait, talk a little bit more about programming your experience. That sounds really interesting.
Okay, so the word psychedelic, words are really interesting. They teach us a lot about like the etymology, teaches us the history and how these things came to be, and they give us a lot more insight into how we can use words better. So psychedelic is like mind revealing or mind manifesting. So if you go into an experience, you can get your set. That's the set part of set and setting, dialed in so that you are, once your head is open, that you already have a natural compass bearing, and it's not just such an amorphous experience. So you already know why you were doing it, and you can kind of come back to that over and over again.
Nice.
I was going to say, with that festival season coming up, a common problem that I've, been around too is when you're taking the psychedelics in a group of people, most of the people might be taking it for recreational reasons, and then another person might think they're taking it for recreational reasons, but they really need it for therapeutical reasons, and then you're in the middle of your rave or whatever, and this person's trying to have a heart-to-heart with you, and you're like, I'm trying to listen to music. So that's another way, even if your intentions are to have fun, you might want to realize that I just went through heavy shit or something, that this might come up, and you might want to discuss that with people who are going to be surrounded with you, so that way, when you're listening to Bass Nectar and the bass is about to drop and you're trying to have a heart-to-heart, they understand, instead of like, why are you talking to me about this right now? I'm trying to listen, trying to melt my face off, so that's why, be clear about your intentions, even if that's not what you really intend to do. Be aware of what might come up. If you just had something traumatic happen, it's probably going to come up. So,
and I think that's so important because I've been to, music is what got me into psychedelics, and I've been to so many shows that unfortunately I was a little tuned out to the music, but I was given a gift of being tuned in deeper to myself and kind of learned some pretty tough lessons. But yeah, you're right. It's important to have that support and have people around you and understand what the intention is before you're taking the substance. I got a lot of these lessons without having that intention, and it led to maybe some not great experiences during the moment that led to growth beyond. But I think that support and understanding and intention are extremely important.
Yeah, I want to see that psychedelic therapy at Bass Nectar. Just everybody that's there, just like, not only do I love you, but I finally love myself.
I think it's really important to like you said, find where people are coming from, where they're at. Why do they want to undergo the psychedelic experience in the first place? How much experience do they have with psychedelics? How much experience do they have with psychotropic drugs in general? where are they trying to go to? Do they want a balls deep experience, or do they want just a
one
shallow
ball,
one? Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
half ball in. Yeah.
So there are so many different factors that have to be evaluated before somebody really undergoes a psychedelic experience. Unfortunately, early on in the movement, nobody had those evaluations, and you see bad experiences as a result.
Yeah.
I would say for people that are gung ho about it, that are really interested in it, I think in the panel at Neurons to Nirvana, Mitchell Gomez talked about how growing up he read everything he could about it. He really had gained as much knowledge as he could before he went and dove in. And someone who is really excited about it, really interested, I would encourage them to do a lot of reading. Read about what are the potential dangers of what you're doing, learning about having a good set and setting, understanding that difficult experiences can and do happen, and ultimately having a good understanding of the intention, and having a good understanding of the history behind the use of these substances. And I think that can help guide someone in terms of choosing what dose they're using, what substance they're using, what context they're using it in, and having that kind of conscious awareness going into these things can prevent a great deal of the problems that I think we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and I really like this analogy that Ralph Metzner, RIP, just passed away, but one of the pioneers of this, and thank you to him for all of his work in getting us here. But what he was saying in Neurons to Nirvana was that, it's like traveling, like you're planning a trip, right? You're not going to just go anywhere, and when you get there, maybe you have a bad experience, and then you're like, well, I'm never traveling again, or this was stupid. So just the same way that you would plan for travel, packing your suitcase, making sure you have the appropriate swimwear or wherever, if you're going to be in the Caribbean or something, you have all the gear, you're ready to go, you're in the right mood, you get there, and it's just a great analogy to make with that.
So one of the things that our initiative provides is individuals the right to grow their own. And one of the things I'm really excited about is teaching people to do it. And then you get 60 days pretty much to prepare. So by the growing itself is therapeutic, and then you have something to look forward to prepare for, to get your questions together. It is it's a good amount of time. It's 2 moon cycles.
Right.
Yeah,
every day you come home, you look at those spores growing,
to
and you're
them.
like, hey, baby, how you doing? I can't wait to eat you. You're going to be good.
But
it's huge. The amount of energy that you put into the medicine that you're growing is going to be reaped tenfold.
Promise you, once you take enough of them, they definitely make sure to tell you that.
They make sure to tell you that?
They make sure to tell you that.
Good job growing us, man. We really appreciate all the love. Well, there's truth to that. I mean, the energy that you're providing into the thing that you're cultivating. I mean, one of the other areas that this film explored was how disconnected we are with the natural environment and how that creates all of these problems. And, one of that also is just even growing our own food. I mean, food used to be abundant. You could go out, just pick a tomato right off the grass. Right? Am I wrong about that? I don't know. I don't know from experience, but I saw Rafael shaking. I said, okay, is that something you're doing, Bethany, picking tomatoes?
I am not picking tomatoes.
Okay, because I saw Rafael looking at you. Oh, he was looking at...
I was looking at
oh, okay, sorry.
Tim, because I know Tim has grown lots of food.
Awesome. Grow your own food.
And small animals too, and all kinds of stuff. But we are so disconnected. And one of the first things that I see, especially when introducing veterans to growing their own medicine cannabis, mainly they see so many more benefits from growing it, and then the whole preparation process, all of your energy going into the plant, all of your attention and love, and you talk to them and sing to them, and you try to make the environment so perfect, and you're asking the plants, what do you want, and all of this kind of adds up to a much better experience at the end, and people end up getting a whole lot of therapy from the growing of the medicine itself, and then at the very end of the process, they reap the reward. It's sort of amazing that just simply taking care of another living thing is one of the most healing aspects of all of this.
Yeah, so important.
So I was just going to touch on its gratitude, right? And in my opinion, one of the highest thought forms, if not the highest. And gratitude is actually the creation affirming itself. So that's a pretty good, awesome feedback loop.
Well, I'm grateful that you shared that.
And I just wanted to share a fun fact that tomatoes are not, in fact, native to Italy at all. They just
Why did you have to bring that up again?
They just became part of
you shattered my world
Italian
last night
cuisine
when you told me
as
that.
of, I don't know, 400, 500 years ago, when
We're having a nice
when the
conversation.
explorers started going to
Are they
the New
American?
World. They're Mexican, actually. Yeah, they're from Mexico.
All the good stuff's invented in Mexico.
Pretty much, yeah. So
Yeah.
foragers in Mexico would have gotten tomatoes. They would have been picking them, but otherwise, no, unless we're stealing from gardens and whatnot.
Well, I renounce my Italian heritage.
Are there psychedelic tomatoes yet?
I actually saw one once. It had this
Simpsons.
really cool swirly thing in it,
Dose tomatoes?
and it was right before a Sound Tribe show, so we called it Sound Tomato and brought it with us, and yeah. That's my tomato story.
I have a tomato story. One of the things that I also was like observing through Neurons to Nirvana was that this whole kind of, we're talking about the disconnection from the natural world and all this stuff, but also just the treatment that's being done right now for veterans with PTSD seems to be kind of like, this is the thing to showcase to the outside world, hey, look, like, we're patriotic, we care about our troops, we're giving them these psychedelic medicines, and it's healing them. So what's your answer to that, government? And really what I think is like, it's just so crazy that we had to go through all that terrible trauma, sending soldiers overseas, fighting these wars, to get to this point finally where we can say, oh, but now can we talk about psychedelics after fucking everybody up for this long? And so I'd like to see, I think you would agree with me, Matt, like a world where we don't have this issue anymore, where we don't need to treat veterans who have PTSD because we don't have veterans necessarily,
I think that's really what a lot of these substances help you come to is, there's always going to be war. There are always going to be bad people who try to hurt other people. Self-defense is not the issue here. What the issue is the propagation of unnecessary foreign wars. And that's really what ideally we'd like to scale back on that. If we return to a military that was primarily a defense force, I don't think we'd be seeing many of the issues that we're seeing in the world and in our own society either. We've fallen prey to a cycle of endless war. And it's not just a war on other countries. The war on terrorism, we declared war basically on the whole rest of the world. Anywhere terrorism comes up, yep, we're going to fight you there. And the war on drugs we've been prosecuting since the 60s, at least even before, and that's a war on our own people. So our government is literally at war with everyone, within and outside of our nation. And
except the real terrorists, these white nationalists that keep killing people left and right. Why are we not looking at those terrorists?
Yeah, but if we can simply get to a point, we've already been exposed to all of the danger. There's no reason. I jump out of airplanes and get shot at and blown up. Psychedelics is not high on my list of dangers. It's not. I wish we would just treat people like adult human beings and allow them to make the choices that they want to make, as long as they're not hurting other people. That's what I raised my hand for and swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And if you boil down the Constitution to its most basic level, it is simply stating that our government is instituted in order to protect the freedoms of its individual citizens, and that's it. Anything more is beyond its purview, and we have a government that has metastasized way past anything that the founders ever, visualized.
I would quickly like to say that I think that what you're describing, right, the government is at war with not only other countries, but the government is at war with its own citizens, with its own ideologies. It's at war with all these things, right? And our government is acting in a trauma response, right? I mean, you experience people who've experienced trauma, and that's basically the perspective that they have, is I'm at war with everything because everything is a threat. Nothing is safe. Nothing is okay. And we've, our government started out in a very, just kind of free for all kind of thing. We all gonna take care of ourselves and like adults and make our own decisions and so on. And I think that in the desire for increased safety, we begin to sacrifice liberty. And I think that in some ways, working with psychedelics can help bring some more balance in terms of trusting nature, trusting the limiting aspects of nature. Like nature creates limits on the human race, as well as coexisting with other people creates limitations in terms of resources. And I think that if we can start to respect those limitations in terms of people have different ideologies from one another, we can respect those different ideologies. We can protect ourselves as necessary, but we don't need to dominate. We don't need to go to other countries and kill all these people for their resources. So I think just building off of what Matt was saying, just the importance of recognizing that in some ways our superstructure is coming from a place of extreme fear. And if we can start to create more environments of empathy and care and support for one another, and being able to have the difficult conversations, then we can start to move away from the militaristic approach to safety equals annihilation of the opposite. And we can actually start to come to a synthesis in our society.
And I would say it's less safety and much more fear. It's this perception of not being safe. If all the cars that drove around were built without seat belts, were built without any type of crash resistance, like old school cars used to be, they'd be a heck of a lot more unsafe. But as time goes, we start to do more research and we find ways to make it more safe. And psychedelics are the same thing in the right set and setting and with the right peer support. And by understanding more of what these substances can do and how much is the appropriate dose, that's how we create a safe environment for this. But we first need the ability to do so through research and through decriminalization and that.
I was gonna go back on to back to the military point. I think one of the great achievements right now of the psychedelic community is, personally, I would consider myself more of the anti-establishment person. In the '60s, it was known that like the hippies and stuff were putting the flowers in the guns, and now that both sides have come together, veterans are some of the obviously the biggest advocates for psychedelics. And and I consider myself like an anti-establishment person. I'd probably have been the one putting the guns, but right now I'm sitting next to Matt, and I consider him a good friend. I don't know if he considers me a good friend. I'm pretty weird, but so I think that's one of the great achievements is we're bringing so much people. There's so many libertarians, there's so many progressives coming together and uniting on this issue, and so I think that's one of the greatest achievements right now. Is we're actually we're ditching the tribalism that is so abundant right now in Trump America, and we're coming together on a common issue that we all agree upon. We might have different ways of achieving it, but we're kind of putting those other differences aside to release the good knowledge of psychedelics.
I'd actually like to believe that veterans can be a uniting force in our society. We come from every class, we come from every race, and the Statue of Liberty says, "Bring me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free." That's us. That's the veterans in America, and we are the embodiment of what America is. And we don't come from any single political background. We don't come from any single ethnic background or cultural background. We are then broken by the machine of perpetual war, and in many ways, we represent the cracks of a society broken by this perpetual war machine. And if we can just manage to heal those cracks and fill them with gold, then maybe the vessel will be even better for having been broken.
Yeah, and being have you heard a lot of people say with soldiers like overseas with the wars and stuff, like, all right, maybe I don't believe in the cause, but it's about just right now, it's just about protecting the guys with me, and that's a big part of it, right? Is like, aside from all this political shit and whatever, you're in a situation, maybe you don't want to be in it, but hey, it's about your community, it's about this connection, it's about this bond, and that really speaks to all parts of this. If we could just kind of learn more from that experience and put it to good uses rather than to ones that are wasteful and evil, in my opinion.
That's the number one thing. No veteran goes over there to prosecute the whims of our government. Most of us, when it comes right down to it, you're fighting for the men and women on your right and on your left. It's that intense bond, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the community, the unit. It's being part of something that is larger than yourself. And I think that our society sort of encourages this isolation and disconnection. And I mentioned it in the question and answer. Dr. Gabor Mate says it's this intense alienation from self. And that in itself is traumatic. It's if you're alienated from yourself, how are you ever going to connect with another human being? It's you have to learn to love yourself before you can love others, and that's one of the main reasons why people have this very intense loyalty to the military and the experiences there, is because for many of them, it was the very first experience they've ever had, which they were part of a community, that they felt that they belonged, and that brotherhood, that unity, it can change your life. And I think that's what we need to encourage in our whole society. We've been shattered into a million pieces, and it's all about this group versus that group. And there's no sense of hey, we're all human beings and we're all in this together. Why don't we just work together? And the military taught me that unity is the greatest force multiplier known to mankind. And if everybody works together, nothing's impossible.
Yeah, and everybody here is doing that through their organization. So it's awesome to see that coming together. And I always say, and we're on the to people out there listening, that's what the best thing that you could do is just get involved, go out. If you don't have something to go to, start your own thing, and you'll find more and more people start, as you mentioned before, Bill, coming out of the psychedelic closet and talking about these things, and just even getting together with people, bonding, sharing stories. That is the stuff that kind of moves things forward.
Well, and I always say that where we are right now as a society is we're more digitally connected than we've ever been in existence, yet we're becoming rapidly more disconnected by the minute. The more that we get sucked into the screens, the more that we get pushed away from other humans, and that perpetuates itself to turn into this isolation that's kind of eating at us, and that manifests itself into depression and anxiety and other types of mental disorders that have their own trauma attached to them. That community
and stigmas too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And community and connection is what we so desperately need. And I think that comes not only in the forms of psychedelics if we look at chemicals, but if we look kind of deeper at what do, they connect us deeper with ourselves and with others in the world, and that's what all of us and our organizations are aiming to do. And so, yeah, encourage everyone, just get involved and get with other people. It might be scary, it might be vulnerable, but it will pay dividends, and encouraging it.
Yeah, and we explored a lot of psychedelics in that film, but some we didn't explore. I know, Rafael, you said you were working with ketamine. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because I feel like that's something that doesn't really get talked about as often, but is also a very powerful, profound, and emotionally healing experience.
Sure. So the way that we work with ketamine at Innate Path is a bit different from the way that ketamine is commonly used right now. We tend to use lower doses of ketamine, so more of like a 0.5 milligrams per kilogram, which is well below like a Kahl threshold. And our goal, both with ketamine and with cannabis, it really translates pretty well, both. But our goal is not necessarily to induce what people would typically consider a full-on psychedelic experience, but really what we're trying to do is allow for the rational mind to loosen itself, and to allow for people to be able to feel into their bodies, to feel their emotions, and to process them with less of a defended state. And that lower dose also allows for the relationship and connection with the therapist to also play a role. And we've been talking about the importance of relationship and connection and all of these things. And so for a lot of people who have PTSD or severe anxiety or depression, there's really not a model for safe relationship. So there's the therapeutic context is really important to be able to create that safe therapeutic relationship and to be able to use that altered state as a way to help slightly mediate that and start to create that level of safety and really facilitate that deeper relationship and the ability to process emotions without without getting into the story of things. We don't need to know the entire trauma history. We don't need to know everything that's ever happened, but we can establish a trust in the relationship, a trust that someone's going to be there, and ultimately, the biggest thing that really roots trauma is the feeling of being alone. And so if we can gradually work through that, not by blasting people out of their psyches, but really just allowing them to just loosen for a moment and just consider that this person that's sitting with you really cares about you, is there to support you unconditionally, and to provide a new model for relationship. And so ultimately, ketamine is great because pharmacologically we know that it has some antidepressant effects. It has some anxiolytic effects. So similar to, in the film they were talking about how MDMA has some of that anxiolytic property without really being sedating. And so a lower dose of ketamine has the advantage of being anxiolytic without being too sedating. And it really allows for us to explore nervous system states and work with them.
There's like a Goldilocks zone in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so important because there's that component. There's a difference between psychedelic medicine and you're kind of self-medicating versus assisted psychedelic psychotherapy, right? And this is something that the shamans have known for years, being there, holding the space, guiding people through the experience. They know the ins and outs. They know the right things to say, how to approach you, and these sorts of things. So this is a huge improvement that we have this kind of stuff going on. It's really cool.
Out of curiosity, what is the method of consumption?
Lozenge. Yeah, it's they call them troches. They're
So you've been to
I've actually been to it, and actually Rafael's my therapist.
Oh,
so,
awesome!
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we're gonna have a therapy session right now. So Matt,
I'm here to tell you, the approach works extremely well. The having the safe space and being able to go into your deepest, darkest corners and let it out.
Yeah, not being afraid to let go.
Yeah,
knowing
because
you could jump.
Yeah, you have a safe space, and nobody's going to judge you there. It doesn't matter what comes out. It doesn't matter the anger, the rage, the self-hate, the disgust, or just the sorrow and fear and sadness. It doesn't matter what comes out. That they're not going to judge you, and everything is in a completely safe container. But the ketamine, it's sublingual. You just put it underneath your tongue, and it dissolves in a matter of 5 minutes.
I was going to say too, for those who are not too familiar with ketamine, the way I've described it, it's like the adopted cousin of the psychedelic community. LSD and mushrooms are much more similar than ketamine is to the rest of them, and I think that's the great thing about psychedelics is it's not just mushrooms, acid, you're good to go. There's so many different substances out there. There's so many different substances we haven't even talked about tonight in general that I think there's it almost can be like a substance for someone, and it's not just you have this religious experiment in the forest naked or something. There is so many different ways, and ketamine is so different than MDMA, and MDMA is so different than psilocybin. Psilocybin is kind of different than LSD.
Well, everything's different than salvia.
Yeah, everything. There's salvia, the weird kid in the corner.
And then we've got Datura.
Yeah, and then there's Datura, the cousin that no one likes. It's not
Amanita. And then there's Toei, which is a very powerful flower in the Amazon.
Well, they're all different tools, and you don't use a hammer for unscrewing a screw, and you don't use a hammer for loosening a bolt. You have to use the right tool for the right job, and each of these substances is slightly different, and they each get at something else in a different way. So I think that having a very wide and broad toolkit to work from is going to be beneficial in the long run for everyone, the patients and the therapists too.
Yeah. What's a common story that you hear from working with veterans, at the Veterans for Natural Rights and the people that you're gathering with there? Is there like a kind of a common occurrence that comes up with a lot of people that you would say is something that they're concerned about or they talk about a lot, share with you?
The number one thing I think would be complete over-medication with traditional pharmacotherapy. It's the level of drugs that we are exposed to after, sometimes when we're still in the service, but after we get out is obscene. It's, I myself, I was on about 20 different medications every single day, 3 different opiates, 2 benzos, a handful of SSRIs and SNRIs. No medical doctor that I've talked to since then has ever said that that's a good approach, but somehow I got prescribed to all of it. And then there were the drugs that actually treated some of the side effects. It goes on and on. It's a vicious cycle, and it just keeps building and building and building. And you may start with a couple drugs, but within a few years, you're going to be up to 12, 13, 14. It's absolutely disgusting what we're doing to these people who have offered up their lives for our society. They're not offering up their lives just to our government. They're offering up their lives for the idea of America, for the people that live on their street. That's really what they're volunteering for, and we're turning our backs on them.
I think not only is it this monster pharmaceutical industry and the money behind that and the will to just prescribe. A lot of doctors I've talked to is just like that's this training that they went through, and they were just told, just give these people just shopping bags of prescriptions. That's your job. Don't worry about nutrition. Don't worry about connection or any of this community or anything like that. Of course, don't look at psychedelics, right? Like that's.
There's a real secret in in the world, not just America, and that's the practice of psychiatry is pretty much a crapshoot. There's not a whole lot of specificity or rhyme or reason to a lot of it. There's a few guidelines and stuff like that, but in general, what happened when I went in is I would complain about something, and then they would categorize whatever I'm complaining about into a syndrome or disorder, and there would be a set number of drugs that are on this list, and they would just go down the list and just, okay, we'll try this one first, and oh, I'm sorry, that one didn't work for you, we'll try this next one. Oh, wait, you were in a corner chewing on your tongue and rocking for 30 days. Okay, we'll dial that back a little bit, we'll reduce the dosage. But it's a complete, it's a farce, and I think
we're like the guinea pigs.
Yeah,
we're the lab rats being tested.
We're all pushed into this. It's ridiculous.
Do you think there's compassion in those arenas?
I think there is, but it's few and far between. I've met a few doctors who are really compassionate, and they really care about whether their patients are getting better, but they're the minority.
Yeah, I do want to play devil's advocate because big pharma is a great big target, and I don't disagree with what's been said. I think that there are some really poor prescribing practices, and I also think that it's worth saying that the prescribing principles and a lot of the guiding principles of psychiatry are also what are guiding the whole realm of psychedelic therapy and psychedelic research and treatments. And I do believe that the psychedelic research that's happening now is guiding new guidelines. It's creating new paradigms for understanding how psychiatry can be better. There's several psychiatrists that are working within the field of psychedelic psychiatry and are definitely shifting protocols and shifting things in a more positive direction. Not to take away from your experience, Matt, or the experience of, I can imagine many other vets also being overprescribed.
I kind of liken it to maybe 100 years ago. We thought electroshock therapy was
it's coming back.
I know, and how crazy is that? I think we don't have
It's making a comeback.
Yeah.
Well, again, so this is one of the things.
Comeback tour.
Well, so what's happening is that people are getting more and more desperate for a solution.
They need tools.
We need tools, and not only that, but our society has sold us on this idea that that there's a magic tool out there, that if we use the magic tool, it'll all be better. That's the Prozac.
With everything,
right? So
right? I mean, not just the drugs, because what you were saying before, it's like I'm not just harping on this as like this one single industry is the bad cause,
right.
But this is the mentality across society.
Right, yeah. And so, but what all these different things are doing is they are bypassing relationship. So if I buy a fast car, it's going to make me happy. If I get the cheeseburger, it's going to make me happy. If I take the Prozac, it's going to make me happy. If I eat a bunch of psychedelics, it's going to make me happy, right? But what's missing in all of those areas, and one of the things that we keep coming back to is community and connection. And one of the things that's missing in all of those scenarios, and welcome Western society, is there's not relationship, right? So all of these tools are really useful. I think a lot of psychiatric medications can be great, and there are many people that they have helped. But typically, when you hear success stories, there's a good relationship in there, right? Like a wife, a church community, whatever, like sewing club or pottery, whatever. But there's people that are getting involved in their communities. They're connecting with other people. They're talking about their issues.
That takes work.
It takes work. And healing takes work. Healing is hard. It's sometimes painful, often painful. And so if we can stop bypassing relationship, a quick anecdote. So when meditators from the East started coming to the United States to teach meditation to Westerners, they were baffled because they said that when they came here, they said, I have never met a group of people that hated themselves so much. And that doesn't exist in Eastern cultures. Like there's just this natural self-love and self-positive regard. We have built our culture around this self-hatred. So I think that if we can connect to each other and love each other, then we can reconnect to that.
Well, I think sign off, Travis, before you. Thanks, Rafael. No, that was great. Fantastic point. Travis, Decriminalize, the psilocybin initiative. I'm messing up the name here. What's the new name? You can say it. Decriminalize Denver, but the psilocybin.
We have a lot of names.
Initiative.
We like Decriminalize Denver because there's alliteration.
All right,
that's
great.
always fun.
Great, yeah.
And by virtue
I heard
of
Kevin say something else before. Okay.
By virtue of decriminalizing psilocybin, we are technically decriminalizing an aspect of Denver.
Awesome.
So
okay.
On that
note, thank you so much.
I'm gonna get to work.
Yes.
Have a great night. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for the buttons and for doing all your work.
I wanted to respond to what Rafael was saying about relationship. And we have a lot of relationship in this country, but it's with things, and it's with material objects, and it's with comparing ourselves to others and competing instead of cooperating. And I think that's a very important distinction, because when we attach ourselves to things instead of people, that's where unhappiness is. And when we feel unhappy, what do? We go and buy more things, and that makes us feel happy for a split second. And if we look at substances, the same thing. Hey, taking more of this will make me happy. It's always like more will make me happy instead of the right thing or the right people. And, you know, you could even surround yourself with a lot of people and think that might make you happy, but if you're not focusing on that relationship and that intention, then it's hollow. And I think there's a lot of hollowness in our society because we have this materialist culture and consumerist culture, and psychedelics challenge that. So, yeah.
This is really interesting because the topic is we're revolving around psychedelics, but we are talking more about compassion, connection, community, empathy, using these things as tools to get there. A lot of times, sometimes on the podcast I'll talk about this stuff, or other people talking about wild psychedelic experiences and crazy trips, and this was brought up, and I thought you had a great thing to say in there. Maybe you could say it again about the ego death and that response, because it was so great. It's you hear this out there in people chasing these experiences and chasing that mystical. I want to have the transcendent. I want to have the big one. Like, when am I going to know all the things?
It's that's like the pinnacle that people idealize the psychedelic experience to be an ego death, and that's not really what it's all about. If you're going to these places, whether they're deep inside yourself or far outside yourself in the universe somewhere, it doesn't really matter. If you're not bringing something back to apply in your everyday life, what's the point? What's the point of going there? There is no point. You have to actually come back to reality, and you have to apply these things, and you have to do the work. It's work. It's hard work to actually improve your life. It requires a lot of boots on the ground, so to speak, and we have to overcome our aversion to this. Ego death is not the goal. The goal is to renegotiate your relationship with your ego so that it doesn't run your life in a way that hurts you.
No, man, I just want ego death, and I want to binge watch Netflix. I just want to watch sex, death, and robots every episode. And that seems to be, for a lot of people, let me just do this thing, and then, oh wait, I don't want to do this work after. I always explain it some people will tell me I had a very profound psychedelic experience. It was really heavy. It was pretty challenging. It was really scary. I'm I don't know. I think I might be done right now for a while or whatever. And it's okay, well, you live in a house where you just took a bunch of shit and put it in your closet, and you're just I'll deal with that later. You took a psychedelic key and you opened this door, and it just started tumbling on top of you. So now you got to pick that shit up. And you got to put it back. Maybe some stuff you don't need anymore. You want to
Marie Kondo that shit.
Right, you got to tidy up. Psychedelic tidy up.
Does it bring you joy? No. Get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about. Yeah, but it's who would have thought some hippie at a Grateful Dead show is going to be oh man, I can't wait to integrate this experience after, because it's we're talking about responsibility, discipline, focus and attention, which almost seems sort of antithetical to the psychedelic experience for a lot of people.
Well, these big experiences, right, that people often talk about, they're really good opportunities to bypass what's actually going on, right? So if I have this
spiritual
huge
bypassing, right?
Sure, spiritual bypassing, but also psychological bypassing, right? If something really bad happened to me, and I take 7 grams of mushrooms, and
that's the theme of the night, by the way.
Right.
7 grams of mushrooms.
I think that's a great precedent. That's a good marker to say heroic dose, right?
Yeah.
Big, I ate a 10 strip of acid, and so this, then suddenly this person has this huge experience. The reality implodes, and they've talked to the aliens, and right, the whole universe has opened up, so on. When they come back from that experience, there's not, like Matt was saying, there's not much to bring back other than this very complicated story. Right, and then I was beamed into the spaceship, and then this happened, and then and you'll never believe what happened next, and you're I bet I can't believe any of it, right? So that oftentimes I think takes us further away from being able to actually be present with, what's happening in this world, right? Like what's happening in the drama of this incarnation, iteration,
the great game.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I love what, and you said that, Matt, you said so many awesome things in there. I keep going back to it, but it's like with talking about that singular entity, right? Like we're here because this is interesting to be separate and have a subjective experience and to interact. It's fun. Diversity and novelty is very interesting and fun. It can be, right? So to be this one thing, like Alan Watts says, right? Like if you were God, you would just get bored being God. You're just like, you're this omnipresent, omnipotent, like, where do you go from there? Well, let's split. Let's make some division. Let's make it interesting, right? So we do have to kind of like navigate this world, and why not do it and bring it back to what Rafael said before with like respect too for other people's different ways of like bringing things back and different experiences, you know?
If you're everything, what is there to love?
Yeah.
You know, you have to be separate. You have to have this separate human experience in order to experience the state of being in love with yourself, being in love with other people, being in love with the world, being in love with life itself. It's that is what this experience is all about. That's what the human experience is all about.
But if everything is love, then to be separate from love is to realize that the point of separation is to learn how to not be separate. I think that there is, I think,
to connect.
Huh?
To connect.
To connect, right? And so
that's what we're all looking for.
Right, and part of the experience of being separate, there's a lot of pain and suffering, right? And so for us to feel our pain, feel our suffering, and to acknowledge that all of us feel a degree of that, right? I mean, there are some really beautiful and exciting and just wondrous and magical things about being in this experience, but then to be able to dig deep down and also acknowledge, like, wow, you know, it is difficult to be separate. It is difficult to have to navigate all these things. And yeah, that gives us a really good opportunity.
And if you get to the root of it, I mean, that's what connects us all. We all have this suffering as a result of being separate, and that's part of what makes us all the same.
Longing.
Well, and there's this separation within ourselves, too. You know, the society that we're in trains us to be a part of a machine, cogs in a machine, and part of a system, and to follow, you know, what the powers that be want us to follow, and that separates us from who we really are and our true souls. And that's where connection with other humans, connection with psychedelics, you know, enables connection with meditation and yoga, enables us to get deeper within ourselves, find out who we are, and live our true lives as our true selves.
Yeah, but that's not good, though, for the establishment.
No. So don't do that, y'all.
Right.
Stay cogs in the machine.
No, excellent. Jenna, hey.
Hey.
Whoa, this is the first time Jenna is on the Mycadelic podcast.
Well, yes.
I think she deserves a proper introduction.
I think so, too.
We'll do that right now. Thanks, Bill. My lovely partner right here, Jenna, JSB.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast officially.
Thank you.
You get to experience me in my professional format, not just ranting at you over breakfast. So thank you for being here. And you're going to Peru soon to teach yoga at Ayahuasca Center, set up by our lovely friends, Scott and Caro.
Exactly.
And it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was, thank you so much. I've really been enjoying the conversation here and really pulled in. And I just wanted to jump in because we were talking about separateness, you know, and I think that being separate, you know, it really, we become distracted and we start to look externally. And it's this whole journey that the human experience, it's our way back to love, it's our way back to our hearts, it's our way back home. And Ram Dass says it really well, you know, we're all just walking each other home and reminding each other. And it's amazing, the feeling of remembering, you know, and we can only remember when we forget. So it's this epic journey back home.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something, actually, so that was good. That was the best voicemail that you ever left me, was when you were she was in Peru at the ayahuasca center that we were working at, and we were back home, like, leaving voicemails. We're doing the Alan Watts, like, how could you remember where you were if you never left? You would forget. You can only journey as far as you forget, but you have to remember when you get back.
And I'll just give some context. I was working down at the Temple of the Way of Light teaching yoga for 4 months down here. I was down in Peru for 5 months last year, and Mike came back to the States, and we would just leave each other these voicemails, and doing Alan Watts impressions is one of our favorite things to do. And I had this epic ceremony, and I was walking home in the jungle alone in the dark, and I'm just laughing to myself, I was in this.
How do you know which way home?
Where is home anyways? Where is home anyway? I don't know. But anyways.
Yeah, it was great. But it's key. You bring up a good point, and because I also had a ceremony with a Colombian shaman who it was a Mumbe ceremony, and Rafael was involved as well, and he had this great message of, like, we have to remind each other, because we always forget. We're going to try and remind ourselves, but we also have to be there to remind each other as well. Like, hey, come back. This is the thing that we're engaged in here, and it's cool, And I mean, I think that's just been a big theme of the night. I mean, maybe we could just go around, starting to kind of wrap up right now. Maybe we can even take some questions if anybody wants to ask anyone any questions. But maybe we could go around and just talk about some of your recent experiences or most memorable experiences in terms of, like, this sort of opening up to love and to empathy and to connection, the things that these beautiful tools that the psychedelic experience can provide us with, and what that's done for you. And I know personally, for Bill, it helped create GoodCinema. So maybe, Matt, if you want to start if something comes to your mind.
Yeah.
That's my question.
What's the question?
Do you want your children to do psychedelics?
If only if they need it. Yeah. The question was, do I want my children to do psychedelics? And my answer is only if they need it. If they really need it, they should do it. That's sort of the point of my own personal explorations, is trying to figure out the tools necessary in order to fix yourself. And if they have problems, if they're broken, then they need to use whatever tools that are necessary in order to fix the problem. So if they feel called to psychedelics, I am not going to argue with them, but they do have to be adults first. And I know I can't control everything, but because of all of the things that I've been through, I think that they'll listen to me. So I really hope that that's true. But if they're not called to psychedelics, I don't think that they should be, forced to use psychedelics. That just goes against all my principles. Freedom.
Dropper in their Cheerios.
What about what Mike said?
What I said?
A memorable experience.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thanks for bringing that back, Brian.
Okay,
excellent audience participation.
So memorable experience. I think really the main one that comes to my mind, there was a veteran that I knew who had been extremely suicidal, and he'd actually tried to commit suicide in the weeks prior to his psychedelic experience. And he actually took Toad. And during this experience, he was very quiet. He just kind of sat back and just had his moment. And when he sat up, he put his head in his hands and he just kind of shook his head every once in a while. He wasn't crying or anything like that. He was just shaking his head. And when he looked up, he looked right into my eyes and said, "How am I supposed to ever think about suicide ever again after that?" And I think that's really the kind of thing that it was a sense of gratitude for life and a reconnection to himself, reconnection to life, reconnection to existence. And that's what we're all searching for. We're searching for this connection, especially to ourselves. And that's what psychedelics provide. I think that's one of the reasons why we all need access. We need access to these things.
Yeah, and then that's great, and what a powerful story. And really like what we were talking about before in the film room about the default mode network, right? And like kind of quieting that mode network and that sort of dictator. I'm not sure if you did, but I thought it was really explained well in Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, his work, interviewing Robin Carhart Harris, and if you think about it, it's this rigid dictator in our head that is just ordering everything to an extreme degree. When that goes down, when those barriers go down, when those walls go down, a whole new world can open up. So.
Well, I think the best way that I heard it described in that book was when he said, imagine there's a hill of snow and you have people sledding down it. And sledding down it represents our normal thoughts. And the more you keep sledding down the hill, the more you keep going down the same path. And that's the way we think. The more we think a certain way, the more we continue to think that way. And what psychedelics do is they kind of wipe the hill clean of snow, and then new snow falls, and so you have new opportunities to explore new ways of thinking and new pathways for those sleds to go. Yeah, that was the best analogy I've heard.
No, that was great, and it's like getting rid of that suicide path, because that's that you're confined to this rigid track. You can't think your way out of it, and then boom, new pathways created.
Yeah, I would argue it's a little more complex than that. Some sleds are a lot heavier than other sleds. Yes.
You've got toboggans and the saucers, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, someone who, as a young child, they brush their teeth every day because they know that brushing their teeth is good for them. But, and some people get used to driving, and driving becomes very habitual, right? You barely have to think to drive. You're just going down that track. But if you get into a car accident and almost die, suddenly you're in a much deeper track in another direction. And taking a psychedelic, even though it may open your view to being like, oh, there are other tracks here, that track is still deep. And so I think I think like it's nice to consider that, okay, default mode network, we can lower it, and now there's other paths. But I think it's much more not only knowing that other paths are available, because that's a really great insight and revelation. But again, we talked about before, is that then there's a lot of work in terms of actually moving the sled to that other path, going down that other path, and then doing that again and again and again, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
heavy sled, heavy man
Right.
on the sled. You need a team of people to come over there and lift them up.
And I think it's more than psychedelics too. It's the integration. I mean, that's so much the experience,
Life
and
practice.
that's why Good Cinema exists, to help integrate this information and this discussion into our normal lives. With psychedelics, you have these profound experiences. Then what? What do you do with that? How do you take that into normal life and exist in this real world that we're in?
You have to do the work.
Or simulation, whatever. Yeah. Work.
And we are so averse to work in this society.
What? Work?
Yeah, I don't want to do any work. I don't even want to ask this next question. I quit. It's too much, guys. No, Joey, I'd love to hear maybe if you have an experience that you could share that kind of was memorable and maybe created more empathy or opened you up, or something that you witnessed.
I would say what's going on right now. Like I said before, the psychedelic community is completely insane. It's blown up like, no one, I think as 5 years ago, if you asked me if hey, you're going to be selling cannabis, you're going to be giving a 20% discount to veterans, and Donald Trump is president, and LeBron James is on the Lakers, I'd be like, all right, time to put down the bomb, bro. LeBron James not on the Lakers, and mushrooms are not going to be decriminalized in 2019. That's madness. Donald Trump can be president. But, so it is, like a crazy frontier.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that. I've been a part of a lot of, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, I've been involved in community organizing for almost 10 years now. And the fact that Psychedelic Club of Denver and so many other psychedelic clubs across the entire country can have 20 people show up at their fucking meetings every week is outstanding. Other organizations struggle to get 20 people at their meetings every month. Psychedelic Club of Denver and other psychedelic societies are doing it every single week across. So I think in the age of tribal, like I said before,
Applause break.
Go Psychedelic Club. In the age of Trumpism, everyone's so enwrapped in identity politics, and if you don't, agree with me on every single issue, you are either a racist or you're a dumb socialist or you're a progressive hippie or you're a traditionalist, whatever. There's a bunch of is these days.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're really building towards, is building a community. We are plenty of people just ask other psychedelic clubs officers. They know they're wrong about a lot of issues, but they still believe them, and we disagree with them all the time. And I definitely have different opinions. I'm sure sitting right here. Just go check my Facebook. Go through my Facebook pictures like someone just did.
But did you like
and comment on pictures from 6 years ago? I'm like, oh, I don't remember
this dude slings a lot of love.
He's committed. He's committed to his connection.
On my Facebook, man.
I totally did, man.
So we're bringing. I think the biggest trip right now is seeing how many people are coming together. If you look at the Psychedelic Club of Denver, there are people who are on the older side, and there's people who are young. It's not just a bunch of people with dreadlocks, trying to discuss it. It's people who are just interested. They had one mushroom trip, and they're interested in talking more. And it's people who have had 100 mushroom trips, and they want to share the love. So I think that's the biggest mind-blowing thing right now, is that this is the next big thing.
Yeah, that last meeting that I was at a couple weeks ago, we could barely fit where we were. There was like maybe 60 people there or something. It was packed. And that was really cool. And like you said, just looking around the room and seeing like my grandma there and well, not literally, but like different just people that you wouldn't, it's not a bunch of people playing hacky sack, and it's a diverse group of people who are interested in healing and coming together and meeting people. That is really cool to see.
Yeah, and we talk about default mode network, and mine is, it's still like the thought of a psychedelic user, like you see someone, like the way they dress or how they, groom themselves, and you have this impression of what a psychedelic user is, how much, heady things are hanging around their neck and ears and whatnot, how large their gauges are, and all those things. But at these psychedelic club meetings, it looks like a lot of people just got off of work, and they're like, instead of going home and watching Wheel of Fortune, I'm going to go talk about psychedelics, and that's fucking cool. So bringing that around to myself, I've had many profound experiences, but I'll share one in particular. I think this was a late night after I was at a show or something, so I was kind of coming down off of some acid and decided to smoke some NN-DMT. And oh yeah is right. So this was, and we want to talk about ego death, this was like straight ego death. I thought it was real death. But in this moment of ego death, I felt at peace. I was in this like eternal darkness of, I don't know, just like the peace. I just felt okay. But there was one thing that stuck with me more than anything, and that was the fact that I had no sense of self, but I also realized that I did not have the people and things around me that really mattered to me. And what stuck out more than anything was my now wife, Laura. And a little background on us, we had dated for, it was probably about 7 years this time, and neither one of us wanted to get married. I grew up with, both my parents had, multiple divorces, and, her parents unhappily married for a long time. And so we both had this impression of marriage, of this thing that just doesn't work, or maybe we're not made for it. When in reality, it was this fear of that, if we decide to do this thing, that's eternity, and oh my God, what if we're not right for each other? When at the end of the day, I realized through this that she was the one thing that mattered to me, and that love was really all we needed, and we had that, and as long as we put in the work, then we could make it work. And so it was that moment during that DMT trip that I decided to ask her to marry me, and so I did, and now we are. So
nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
The Beatles.
Yeah.
All you need is love. Bethany, share a little bit about what it's like being the national president of the Psychedelic Club, and also then you can go into maybe some of your experiences as well.
Well, I have to say that when I first took over the role, that I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really have any direction. So I've kind of, taken my time to sit and watch and see what it is that is needed within the community, and really what the Psychedelic Club is here to do. And I have to say that it is exciting to watch this community come together. I got involved with the Psychedelic Club back when it just got started. They had held a drug symposium in Boulder. I remember Rick Strassman talked there. And my friend sent me this link because he knew where I was in my psychedelic journey. And he knew that the people that introduced me to psychedelics weren't going where I was going. So I was introduced to psychedelics in the music scene. And nobody really took into consideration what psychedelics may do to me. For a lot of them, it was just a good time. And I never really even did research on them. I remember having a boyfriend in high school who called me one night and was like, I just did acid for the first time. And I was like, what in the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? It's acid. It's literally called acid. Why would you do that? And he's like, I know you, and I know that you would love this. And I'm like, you are out of your mind. And here I am today. So that's interesting. But so what got me here was a specific experience that I had. A little backstory: when I was 16, my grandfather died on my birthday of a heart attack, and I went to the desert for my birthday. And as soon as I took the acid, I knew that this time was not going to be like any other. And as it crept in, I started to watch my entire life unfold in front of my eyes. I started to really feel all of my insecurities and my doubts and my fears, and I was having a really hard time, and I couldn't get the words out. Am I dying? It was so surpassed anything that I had forgotten that I had even taken LSD that day. And I thought I was maybe in a car accident or I was laying in a hospital bed. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And I couldn't get the nerve to say, am I dying? So I would just look at my friends and I'd be like, is this happening right now? And they're trying to make me feel better, and they'd say yes. So that is not, so I'm like, I gotta go back. Like, I gotta go back. I can't do this right now. And I remember my friend rubbing my back, and she was trying to make me calm down. And she's like, it's peaceful, right? It's peaceful. And at that moment, I surrendered. And as I surrendered, I was no longer anywhere that I was. The next thing I know is I was standing next to my grandfather. I was holding his hand. I could feel him. I could hear him. And he showed me the universe in that moment, and he showed me that we're all connected and that we don't have to live in fear, because we will always find each other again, over and over again. And I came out of that, and my friend said that I didn't talk for hours. I mean, what are you supposed to say after that? And I finally got to the point where I could talk again, and they're like, do you want to talk about what happened? And I looked at them. Mind you, these are people who have been doing psychedelics since they were like 15, and they were all probably 15 years older than me, if not 10, 11, and they had never heard. And I said, I just saw my grandfather in the desert. And they're all like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is going on? What? You did what? And from there, they're like, you know what? Maybe acid just isn't for you. Maybe this just isn't for you. And it was hard. It was difficult for about a month. I mean, I could hear voices, and I wasn't sure that it was for me either. But after I kind of integrated it on my own for a while, I mean, how fucking beautiful is that? Whether that was actually my grandfather standing in the desert or not, that was something that I got to experience,
Yeah, right.
And and who who's to say that somebody shouldn't be allowed to experience that?
Yeah.
You know, like, that's one of the most powerful things I could even imagine. And, you know, the psychedelic journey has really just showed me a lot. And it has showed me a lot with divine timing and healing and, you know, the magic that we're surrounded by. And, yeah, so I just want to say thank you to all of you for all of your work that you're putting into this. It means everything to me, and I know it means everything to you guys too. So come see the Psychedelic Club.
We will. Thanks for sharing that. That's amazing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, you got a tough act to follow, Rafael.
I'm not even going to attempt to follow.
Well, yeah, maybe
hopefully stand alongside.
Yeah, maybe join.
Science! I'm not, I guess, trying to think of a way to kind of bring things together. I think being a part of this panel has been awesome, just to see so many varied perspectives, so many passionate people, each giving their gifts, and I think that this is such a great model. I loved hearing, I love hearing how Matt has been getting involved with veterans. You know, can you say your name again? Joey. I loved hearing how Joey is, you know, engaging with the community. How Bethany is engaging people all over the country and helping people organize and share their experiences and create safe spaces, and that people are showing up. You know, people are coming to these meetings. People are talking about these experiences, and they're curious. And I think, for me, I find a lot of hope that that we will not only, you know, get back into relationship with substances, but that we'll get back in relationship with each other, and that, you know, even people who don't use psychedelics or don't do drugs or whatever, that we still can connect, and that we can still, like, find these common things, and, like, whatever people are passionate about, that we can still connect on the feeling of passion, right? Like, whether someone's into, you know, whatever it is that they're into, that we can connect on that. And I think that if we can start to see people in that way, and you know, there's a quote that I heard recently that, you know, if you look deep enough into the history of your enemies, you can find a lot of pain, and that if we can start to connect with each other's pain, then we can really start to come together and have empathy for one another, and put things aside and work towards the solutions that we already have, right? Like the movie said, right? You know, the solutions are already there. I went to Burning Man last summer, and I remember standing there and seeing, like, this city of 80,000 people in the middle of the desert, like the most improbable thing. And I'm like, wow, if 80,000 people can build this in 1 week,
what else is possible?
Why can't we can end world hunger, we can end homelessness, we can end all that if we want to, if we come together and we put the effort and we put the manpower into it, and people show up. So I think I find a lot of hope, and you know, I guess my personal piece, that's my reflection on this whole thing, seeing all of you, Billy, and your work with GoodCinema, super awesome. But I guess personally, you know, working as a therapist, I mean, people come in and they're like, so, like, what do you think of your job? And I'm like, there's nothing else in the world I would rather be doing than to hold space for people and help them work through the things that are holding them back, and seeing people come in who cannot leave their house, who struggle to look people in the eye, who have a broken sense of community and broken sense of self, and watch those people start to connect to communities and connect with each other and become curious about life and become enchanted with life again. I mean, that there's nothing else that I would rather be doing, and to be able to help other people create the spaces for that to happen, yeah, I think it gives me a lot of hope, and I feel honored to be a part of this in whatever way that I am, and hopefully support other people who are passionate in this or passionate in whatever it is that they're into.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, everybody knows helping other people really does give you a certain kind of joy that you just can't experience any other way. Then you start to feel good about yourself, too. You're like, wow, if you're selfish and you just care about yourself, help other people, because then you'll feel really good about yourself. Did that make sense? All right, never mind. Jenna, what do you think about all of this? Want to get your opinions and stuff. We're going to wrap up pretty soon, so just want to get everyone's kind of final thoughts, opinions, and whatnot.
Yeah, and thanks for letting me jump in. And it's been the whole event tonight has been amazing. That's for sure. Yeah, and something that keeps coming back for me is the importance of doing our own work. I think that's really how we change the world. And so just honoring, everybody at this table, is doing their own work. And, I think that's how, just by showing up in the world differently and integrating those experiences, that's how we bring about change. And, the specific question about, particular experience. I mean, I've had so many, profound experiences, spending 5 months in the Amazon last year, drinking medicine a lot, doing a plant diet in isolation. And, I think an experience I can share is one of the first times I drank ayahuasca. Every time it's profound, and every time it's unexpected and it's different, and I'm humbled every single time and checked every single time. But in this particular instance, I faced my shame. I faced a lot of things, but more importantly, I'm trying to do this in a succinct way, and it's impossible to captivate with words, but that particular ceremony changed the course of my life. You met me afterwards. Come on. I worked 7 years in a corporate setting, doing executive coaching and change management. Quit my job in May of 2017, left for what was meant to be a 6-month trip alone in Asia. I was gone a year, then ended up in Peru at this center. And even after all of that traveling and all of that growth, I was still telling myself a story that I had to go back to where I was before I started traveling. And I told myself a lie as to why I was going back. And in this particular ceremony, I saw that I was actually coming from a place of fear, and that I was going back out of fear of losing my community, out of losing those that I loved there, and that I would no longer be accepted. And I went into that ceremony with the intention, show me my pain, and I experienced complete nourishment and unconditional love, and just this complete acceptance of that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I went back there, and so that was such a gift, because I then had very difficult conversations with different friends and family members, and I then started living from a different place. And I think that's a huge takeaway for me, is that it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. No one can ever know. Only you can know. Where do you live from? Like when you make choices, when you make decisions, where is that being born from? And is it coming from a place of the heart and of love and unconditional, or is it coming from a place of fear? And we can tell ourselves the craziest stories, but that was such a gift, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for you bringing up Star Wars at the retreat, because that caught my ear, and I sat down. I was like, let's talk about it. But really, when you break it down, I mean, it's a great metaphor there with giving into that fear, going down to the dark path and the machine world and becoming a machine versus going the light side and being more in tune with things. So
I mean, I loved
everything goes
Bill
back to Star Wars.
In what you shared, I really related to that, because you that decision to engage in marriage or not, right? Like I feel like you had a similar realization of not coming from a place of fear, right, in your beliefs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was able to move past the fear because I saw that the fear was just something that I was creating within my own mind. And I guess that's another thing that no one's really hit on, is that psychedelics really teach us that we have all we need. And I think so much in this society we feel that we need so many external things, whereas really everything we need is within us. And that's so important.
Awesome. Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. So thank you all so much for being here. Really, it's a pleasure. I want to do this more, and it was, I'm sure I'll talk to each of you individually, but really great. So any last words, final thoughts? Get them out now while we can, and then we can go and take 7 grams of mushrooms together.
Speaking of tripping, we have Bicycle Day coming up. Decriminalize Denver will be there. Mike, I'm sure, will be there. I think almost everyone here will be there. So Bicycle Day at the venue called Your Mom's House. Downtown, we're celebrating LSD.
Why is it called Bicycle Day?
Bicycle Day, when Dr. Hoffman first synthesized LSD, he rode his bike, and well documented. It's the first actual LSD trip, was very well documented. We're celebrating. Everyone's been working really fucking hard. Mushroom campaigns have been working hard. Psychedelic clubs working hard. Veterans for Natural Rights. Everyone's been working really hard. We deserve a party. The Psychedelic Club's hosting that. 419, Your Mom's House. Be there.
Yeah, be there.
Party at your mom's house.
Party at your mom's house. She's bringing acid.
Bethany?
Well, of course, I have to mention the Psychedelic Club. Please come to our party. Another message that I have, I do help with the campaign as well, so if you want to get involved with that, please donate at decriminalizedenver.org or go to our Facebook at Decriminalize Denver and send them a message to get involved.
Yeah, this is really important. I just want to jump on that again too. Decriminalize Denver is doing a really amazing, revolutionary thing right now, and even if you're not in the state, city, county of Denver, Colorado, you're out there, you're listening to this, we're recording this, there's people listening. Donate to the campaign. They have so many volunteers that are working endlessly around the clock to try and push this revolutionary freedom forward and give power back to the people. So help out if you can, because this is going to be something that's going to start here and spread like the mycelial network does.
So I just have one last thought for people to contemplate at home. That amnesia is what holds it all together.
Just gonna drop the mic on that one. All right, we got. I know you're coming back on the podcast, Rafael.
And I just wanted to add real quick that our great partners Gaia has set up a free trial. So for those of you that want to learn more about psychedelics, they've got tons and tons of good content to dive in. But not just that, meditation, spirituality, all other things that might be connected to help you get more in touch with yourself. Gaia.com/GoodCinema. You can get yourself a free trial, and stay tuned because we'll be getting some psychedelic series or psychedelica live event series coming soon, and we'll get Mycadelic involved too.
Awesome, Matt.
May 7th. Denverites vote. You gotta decriminalize
We can edit that part out.
Yeah, like it can't be understated. This is an extremely important issue. No municipality in the history of the nation has ever voted on the decriminalization of anything except for cannabis, and this is the first time it's being done. We really hope that it's successful, and the only way that happens is to get involved. Vote. If you can vote, vote in the election, and if you can't vote in the city and county of Denver, then share. Share all of the posts, share the initiative, share anything and everything about psychedelics as medicine. The only way that this system changes is by individual effort, one step at a time. So you are never too small to contribute.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
VeteransForNaturalRights.org.
Yeah, Veterans for Natural Rights, that's right.
VeteransForNaturalRights.org. Or our Facebook page, all right.
Woo! Yeah, this is amazing, and I guess I'm going to take this
plug.
opportunity to plug.
Yeah.
So I
That's what we call it in the biz.
founded a company, Venture Beyond LLC, and I'm a life coach. I started it in February. I have 2 paid clients, maybe a third coming on. So I focus in helping navigate transitions, specifically relationships, career, community, and home. I also teach yoga and do guided travel and support ayahuasca retreats. So I'm actually going out to Peru in a week, and I'll be teaching down there. So Venture Beyond.
And she's the director of Impact at Good Cinema.
I am the director of Impact at Good Cinema, which I love, and I love what we're doing here.
Thank you for helping us do amazing work.
Thank you guys for directing the impact of this podcast. So, boom. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you for sticking around and being a part of this. And to all you people out there, just go to your local water supply and just put as much LSD as you can in there, and we'll change this thing. Safe, responsible use, everyone. All right, peace out. Get stickers, Mycadelic t-shirts coming soon. I love you all. Bye. All right, well, that concludes the first ever Mycadelic live podcast. So happy to be releasing this 3-part series, Mycadelic episode 100, 3-part series, spectacular, with all these amazing guests and this great collaboration again with Bill Byrnes of Good Cinema, who's just doing some really, truly amazing things. And this might not have been possible without that. So big thanks to Bill and Good Cinema for what they're doing and bringing this community together and then creating these recordings that we can then share with people out there in the world. Let them know what's going on in places like Denver and other places that are doing these kinds of great things. So stay tuned for part 3. Part 3 will be the solo cast, and that will be out. Part 3 will be the solo cast, and that's next. So stay tuned for that. Again, I'm going to be sharing my experience, what this has been like for me, my personal journey, this journey of the show, how it's been with what I've learned from the different guests coming on, the different experiences that I've had, all that kind of stuff. So the Mycadelic 100th episode spectacular series special will continue. Stay tuned. And it's also the Mycadelic 3-year anniversary. So everything kind of lined up to happen at a really nice time, as I talked about in the part 1, about these wonderful synchronicities that can happen. So keep doing that. Keep tuning into these things. Keep sharing these things if you're interested, if you're excited, if you're curious. The best way that we can go about creating this world that we want to see is talking about these things and bringing it to the attention of other people and doing the thing that makes your heart sing, following your bliss and allowing the engine of the reality creation machine to stir up some synchronicities in your life. Hop on that frequency and let's make the world a better place, because I truly believe that's what we can do. So thank you all for tuning in. This concludes the podcast, the live podcast portion. Part 3 is next, my solo cast journey. So stay tuned for that. And if you enjoy the show, if you like what's going on here at Mycadelic and you're interested in more, go to the website, mikebrank.com. If you want to show your love and support for the show, go to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps the show, helps bump it up into iTunes so more people are aware of it, more people can see the kind of interesting conversations and guests and thoughts that we're discussing and collaborating on here. So that's the best way. You know what to do if you love something. You don't need other people to tell you what to do. Just do it. Just share it, like it, subscribe, whatever you got to do. But if you want to go a step further, the reviews on Apple Podcasts are always great. And then Patreon to donate to the show and become a part of the producers of this show. And then have an option to join the Micadelic Inner Sanctum WhatsApp chat group, where we're bringing people together from all over the world. And that's one of the greatest joys of this podcast, is connecting other people from all over the place and sharing their experiences and communicating with each other. So really happy about that. Go to patreon.com/MikeBrank and check it out. And you can donate as little as $1 a month or $2 or $10 or $50 or whatever you want. So thank you so much to everybody. This was really great. This was a special 100th episode podcast event, and part 3 is coming up. Thanks. Love you all. Bye.